Welcome back to Law and Crime, everybody. We're covering the Tex McIver case out of Atlanta. We have a live feed in the courtroom. We're carefully monitoring it, and as soon as we do have audio, as soon as the case starts again, we'll make sure to go to it. But I want to bring in back our very special guest for the morning, Prosecutor Kenya Johnson. Kenya, I know we were having some audio issues, but I do want to let our viewers know that courtroom should look familiar to you because you were there yesterday. You saw the testimony of Danny Joe Carter and Tom Carter. So please, if you can explain to us one more time, what was it like being in that courtroom and hearing them testify?
It's definitely electric. This is a case that is of interest to the Atlanta community, to the legal community, as he was very well known. And so you've got the cameras in the courtroom and everyone's on edge to listen to any hint of where you could think that he may have intended or purposefully shot his wife.
Now, I think we broke up before, but you heard the voicemail that Tex left Tom Carter. How much is that a cover-up of a murder, or how much is that a cover-up of an accident? I can't tell yet.
Well, that's what the jury is going to have to decide. This was the first time we actually heard Tex McIver say something about the murder, and the jury can look at it as if he is now in strategy mode versus grief mode, where an accidental shooting would prompt you to be in grief mode. But right away, Tex McIver was plotting his next move, and he understood the gravity of the situation that was before him.
But here's the thing. Here's the flip side of it, right? He didn't know what Diane McIver, his wife, told the doctors, saying it was an accident. He knows that he was the one that shot her. I don't think anybody was doubting that at that time. How beyond the realm of possibility of it is, here's a guy who knows he's in the wrong. He wasn't charged with murder initially. He was charged with involuntary manslaughter and reckless conduct. He's a lawyer. He knows the law. He knows he's going to get in trouble one way or another. He was just trying to cover his bases. Now, I'm not saying that that is justified whatsoever, but let's not forget, he is charged with influencing witnesses, but he's also charged with murder. Could you see him being guilty of one count and maybe not guilty of another in this case?
Well, actually, the jury has to decide both. They have to decide, did he cover up something, and what is that he covered up? It's very important to note that Diane was not under the influence of any drugs at the time that she made those statements. However, she probably was through a very traumatic event. She had just been shot. So taking her words, she probably couldn't fathom at that time that her husband would ever try to kill her. So as a prosecutor, I would try to discount her present sense impression, while the defense is going to try to play up her present sense impression that she knew it was an accident. But the fact is that she was in the front passenger seat, and she has no idea of how he looked when he did it or what he was thinking when he shot her.
Kenya, let me ask you this. You saw Danny Joe Carter yesterday, okay? She was on the stand, I think, for 3 days. Explain to our viewers, what should they have gotten out of her testimony? She was the star witness for the prosecution, so what should they have gleaned from her testimony in its entirety?
What Danny Joe offered is that while this was a good relationship, it did have its troubles. She offered that Diane was certainly the dominant one in the relationship, and Tex McIver was attempting to always please her. But however, she was in charge, and they did not have a perfect relationship. She often got on him about his weight, not unlike other marriages, but she plants the seeds of discourse, and it's up to the prosecution to take it all the way in to show that he had a motive for killing his wife.
One of the key areas that she talked about was this conversation that she had with Tex that really led up to that influencing witness charge, what he told her at the hospital to say, don't get yourself involved in this. Now, he'll say, and what the defense has tried to say is, don't get yourself involved, Danny Joe, because out of the goodness of his heart, I don't want you getting involved in this. But the other side of it is, it looked like he was trying to cover it up. Everybody knows that she was driving the car. So I want to play for our viewers right now, under cross-examination, how Danny Joe talked about that conversation that she had with Tex. Take a look.
Correct?
That sounds right.
All right. You didn't anywhere tell them, tell them that Tex had this conversation with you, this stupid conversation. You didn't tell them that, though, right?
Yes, you're correct.
Okay. You also told them, in response to their question, tell us about their relationship. Tell me about their relationship. And you said, it's as close to perfect as you can get. Those were your words.
I believe that.
I mean, she loved her work and made a ton of money. He likes what he does. I think he could probably retire easier than she could because she really loves her work.
I remember saying that.
Right? And they're both very successful and extremely happy.
Yes.
You were specifically asked before the police walked up, what kind of conversation did you guys have? Remember that?
No?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I remember when, what police?
Can I ask you?
I lost my bearing and where
This
we're
is
at.
the first statement. The first statement to Riker and Rogus.
Okay.
Now, and I'm going to ask you to read it and refresh your recollection.
I'm asking the court perhaps to just maybe take 5.
Sure, why don't we get through this statement? And okay if we get through this statement? Yes, okay. We'll get through this statement and then we'll give everyone a chance to revote.
Okay.
All right, so Ms. Carter's reviewing what page of the Robeson L transcript?
3.
3.
Well, that's it.
Oh, sorry.
That's some of the testimony of Danny Jo Carter, the woman that was driving the car where Tex shot Diane McIver, his wife. She was the star witness of this case. She was the only witness to the actual shooting. Again, I want to talk with Kenya Johnson, where as we look at a live feed in the courtroom, there's some administrative matters happening between the attorneys and the judge. As soon as we do have a live feed, as soon as the trial starts back up, we'll make sure to go to it. For anybody just joining us, that's Tex McIver. That's the defendant right there. He's charged with the murder of his wife. Now, his team is claiming it was an accident. So, Kenya, we just heard Danny Jo. How is the jury going to assess her credibility, particularly from this fact, when she had the opportunity to explain to investigators that she had a conversation with Tex McIver at the hospital, but she initially didn't do that? She said under, I don't know if it was direct examination, it might have been, that initially she felt bad for Tex. She was angry, but she felt bad for Tex. She said that she had a good, Diane was one of her best friends. Tex she had a fond relationship with. How is the jury going to assess her credibility?
Well, the jury should assess her credibility in the way that you would a close family friend. She's detailed that they were friends together with the wife and with the husband. And so, of course, Danny Jo had an interest in making her friends in the best light possible. Danny Jo may not have initially known what to take from the shooting. Was it an accident? Was it purposeful? And it was also fresh. And subsequently, she hired an attorney. She admits to doing that because of the media statement. So it was just also new and fresh. The prosecution can make the case that she was in shock and she was just trying to assess the situation and maybe protect her friends.
What do you think was the worst part of her testimony in terms of the defense? Was it the idea that the gun went off at a stoplight and it wasn't really, there was no bump in the road that would have triggered the gun? I mean, because I'm listening to her testimony, I think there's some good bits for the defense. She kind of supported the theory that Tex had a sleeping disorder. He had a problem when he would sleep and he'd wake up and he might have a certain reaction. I knew that she testified under cross-examination that Diane and Tex had a great relationship. There was nothing out of the ordinary before the shooting. What do you think were the parts of her testimony that hurt the defense's case the most?
What concerned me the most is what happened after the shooting. And so I think the jury will pick up on the fact that she didn't pull over immediately and call 911, that she drove past 2 hospitals in order to get to Emory Hospital. There are so many questions in both Tex and Danny Jo's behavior after the incident that it just raises questions to how much did Danny Jo really know, or was this just a knee-jerk reaction? So lots of questions. And the great thing about this trial, and very different from many others, is Judge McBurney is allowing the jury to ask questions. After each person testifies, he's accepting the questions, and the defense attorney and the prosecution review the questions. So yesterday we saw the jury asked to see part of the street cam video again, and we saw them ask very detailed questions about what did Danny Jo do immediately afterward. They wanted to know if she was left-handed or right-handed, and did she know the route in which to travel. So the questions that they're asking, they are trying to determine whether this is an accident or whether there's more to it.
And we're going to talk about that particularly in a minute. We're going to concentrate on the hospital that they went to, Emory Hospital, because I want to hear your views on that. But I do want to let our viewers know two things. So we are looking at a live view of the courtroom. That is a live view. There's no audio yet. There's nothing really happening. As soon as the trial starts, we'll make sure to go to it. Now, Tex McIver will be our main focus here on the network, but there's another case that you can follow if you go to lawandcrime.com. This is the Leon Jacob case out of Texas, a man who is accused of hiring a hitman to kill his ex-girlfriend. If you want to follow that case, go to lawandcrime.com. Our main focus here on the network will be the Tex McIver case. What I want to play for you right now is some more testimony from Danny Joe Carter, and there's a lot more to discuss in this case. Take a look.
Did he?
Yes, he did.
And you answered him, there was not a doubt in my mind that it was completely one of the most horrible accidents that I know about.
I did say that.
You told Detective Smith in that interview that Tex seemed to be in shock, in feeling like horrible. Do you remember?
Yes.
And this is the time where you told him that he felt like, he said he felt like shit. I don't know what to say to him. He absolutely worships her.
Yes.
Once again, secondly, you expressed to Detective Smith the second time that it was a horrible accident. Did you say it once? You said it more than once. Correct?
Yes.
Do you remember during that second interview whether Detective Smith had asked you about conversations that you had with Tex?
I do.
And that you replied, he did, he said that he hated for me, to be drug into this mess. Remember that?
Yes, I do.
But you didn't say anything, you didn't tell him anything after that.
No, I didn't.
So you didn't tell him anything in the first statement. You didn't tell him anything when specifically asked about those conversations. In the second one, in the second statement.
In the first statement, we didn't get to that point.
I think I'm not going to go back. Do you remember Detective Smith saying to you that police officers in the Atlanta Police Department have accidental discharge of weapons all the time?
I don't remember that.
Again, that was some of the testimony from Danny Joe Carter, the prosecution's star witness in the Claude Tex McIver case out of Atlanta, a man who was charged with the murder of his wife, Diane McIver, by shooting her from the backseat of a moving car. And Danny Joe was the driver in the night in question. We are looking at a live feed at the courtroom. There was a late juror. That's why court is starting a little bit late today. We're told the juror has arrived, so we expect the court to start any minute. As soon as it does, we'll go into the courtroom. But I want to talk again with our guest for the morning, Kenya Johnson. Kenya, you heard Danny Joe just there, and again, you were in the courtroom yesterday watching her and Tom Carter testify. Now, she initially said that this was a horrible accident. She even was on record of saying that police officers themselves have accidental discharge of weapons. Again, I'm going to ask, and for Danny Joe Carter's testimony, besides the cover-up, if you want to say that, of Tex McIver covering up what happened, What from her accounting of the actual shooting looked like a murder?
Well, we're looking at murder, which is legally and technically has legal definition, and then we're looking at the social definition. So, of course, Danny Jo immediately said it was an accident. That's what it looked like to her. But now we're dealing with the technical legal definition of murder, an intentional act designed to bring about deadly harm. And so, in that light, what she offered was that he didn't immediately scream it was an accident. He didn't immediately say pull over, let's call 911. I think Danny provides the absence of urgency, the absence of panicking, in that this was a calm situation where they drove to the hospital, and while he acted concerned, she brings about the questions through the absence of actions that he may not have been as concerned as if it would have been as an accident.
Isn't the real crucial part of this case, though, what's going to happen in the car when they have the forensic analysts battling it out in terms of the position of the gun, the trajectory of the bullet? The prosecution started out their case with motive. We believe their case is going to continue through next week. But again, they started out with the financial reasons, the motive behind why Tex McIver would kill Diane, his behavior before and after the shooting. And then I think they're going to move into the actual shooting itself. What did you think of that strategy? Let's start off with motive, even though it's not an element of a crime, and then we're going to show you the actual way that the gun was fired. What do you think about that?
It goes chronologically and plays upon the juror's view of the facts in the case. So talk about the motive. Already established that, yeah, he's got good reason and the capability to do this murder. Let's explain now how he's going to do the murder. One of the things that the forensic scientists are going to talk about and the prosecution will want to build up is the amount of pressure that it takes to pull a trigger. So when you pull a trigger, you actually have a certain amount of pressure that you have to exert, intentional pressure. And so they're going to try to show that waking up out of your sleep, out of a sleep disorder, startled, may not result in the strong force needed to pull the trigger. So that's why accidental shootings are best defended by saying that you had to intentionally exert this force to make this weapon discharge.
So when the defense began their opening statements, we heard a little bit about the gun itself, this .38 caliber Smith & Wesson, and they said it could have been in dual action mode or single action mode. If it was in double action mode, you need about 15 pounds of, or 12 or 15 pounds of pressure to pull the trigger, while if it's in single action, it's almost like a hair trigger. And according to them, we're not sure what mode it was set to. And we don't know what mode it was set to, and obviously we'll learn about this a little bit later on. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that reasonable doubt?
Well, once the forensic scientists establish what type of mode it was in based on their research, that will give us some indication of how much it took to pull this trigger.
And if they can't determine what mode it was in, what should the jury do?
Then that is going to be an uphill battle for the prosecution.
Right. I want to just quickly ask you a question, a part about the case that I found interesting. The prosecution was trying to stress the point that Emory Hospital, where Tex McIver told Danny Jo to ultimately drive to, it doesn't specialize in traumatic injuries. It doesn't specialize in gunshot wounds. So the idea becomes this man shot his wife and took her to a hospital that he knew wouldn't be able to take care of her, and she ultimately died. That's the theory put forward by the prosecution. Is that strong? Is that a little bit of a reach, though? I mean, how many people, you tell me, how many people in that area know what Emory Hospital is known for?
Well, Emory Hospital is very popular here in the Atlanta area, and it's known to be a good hospital. But if you were to ask a layperson why it's a good hospital, they wouldn't be able to tell you if it was for trauma or for children and juvenile issues. They don't know why. It just has a great reputation. So I can see why someone may want to go to Emory and not know the details of whether they were good for traumatic type of injuries. But however, skipping two hospitals that have emergency rooms, that's going to be a struggle to prove why why anyone would take the extra risk and the traffic opportunities or traffic delays that may occur anytime you turn the corner. So it would always be safer to go to the nearest hospital, and then once she's stabilized, have her life flighted to the hospital of your choice.
Right, right. That's an interesting theory because and they talked about it. Atlanta Medical Center and Grady were two other hospitals they could have gone to. Then it becomes the question if there was you're in a panic mode, what do you do? But the part that doesn't work out so well for Tex, as you said, he wasn't really panicked, and he even told Danny Joe, make sure you drive carefully. You don't want to run over people. They might have carriages that are crossing the street. So if somebody was cool, calm, and collected about that, he should have maybe thought about what hospital to go to.
Absolutely. And if you're worried about pedestrians and you've got a bleeding person inside your car,
bleeding wife,
a bleeding wife, you have definitely some concerns about where their priorities are and what is of most concern. I think he wanted to go through, or the prosecution can prove that he may have wanted to go through the motions that he tried to get medical attention for his wife, but in reality and through Danny's testimony, he wasn't in any rush to get to any particular hospital.
Let's talk a little bit more about Danny's testimony. I'm going to play you some more of her testimony. She testified for about 3 days. She was on the stand. That's not easy, but under direct examination and cross-examination. But I want to play for you some more of her cross-examination from the other day. Take a look.
Yes.
He was trying to get you to tell him about any conversations that you may have had with anybody at the hospital, correct?
Yes.
And the purpose of his asking you those questions was just to make sure that if anybody at the hospital said something different, he wouldn't have to come back and talk to you again.
Correct.
Get everything out, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, you were asked, so anything else you can remember that you think might be important, right?
Yes.
And do you remember your answer was, not now?
Not now.
Okay. And indeed, during that second 53-minute interview, you didn't mention the conversation that you had with Mr. McIver, correct?
I did not.
That stupid conversation.
It was a bad conversation that sounded very bad for Tex.
Well, here was my question. I'm sorry. Maybe you didn't understand my question. My question was, you didn't tell Detective Smith, who was trying his best to get you to tell him everything, you didn't tell him when he asked you, is there anything else
Correct.
that's important?
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay. As I understand it, after that conversation, you attempted to, I guess, get a hold of somebody like your husband, correct? Did you text him? Did you call him?
I got in touch with him before that. One of the detectives that was there, they would come in and out from somewhere and check on me occasionally and bring me a bottle of water or ask me if I needed to go to the restroom. And I borrowed one of their cell phones to call.
Again, that was some of the testimony of Danny Joe Carter, a key witness in this case. We're keeping a careful eye on the courtroom as soon as it starts, so we're going to make sure to go to it. I want to bring in again Kenya Johnson, who is a attorney, a prosecutor from the area. She knows this area very well. And I just want to have a quick question for you, Kenya. The attorneys in this case, Clint Rucker, Don Samuel, Bruce Harvey, what do you make? There's some very strong personalities. What do you make of their styles, and how are they known in the area?
Jesse, you are watching magic in the courtroom. These are the top attorneys at the top of their game. Clint Rucker is well known in this region for his trial acumen. His style is very conversational and very realistic. You almost feel like you're sitting on his couch as he talks to you. And then you have Bruce Harvey and Don Samuel, who are just beasts as defense attorneys, and they are going to give him and are giving him the best defense possible. They're calculating, they're taking their time, analyzing each and every piece of evidence, and this is probably their seminal trials in their careers on both sides.
Got to ask you, the braid. So what do we make of that?
That's his own unique style. We've come to enjoy it, and he's branded himself very well for that. People all around the country are asking about his famous braid.
They are. I might have a Twitter handle. I'm not exactly sure. But the interesting part is when you look at their styles, Don Samuel is a bulldog. He comes out there. He's very aggressive. Some people are a little put off by his style, but he gets the answers that you want. Bruce Harvey basically was so conversational that he went through the whole case by a story. And Clint Rucker is just likable. He's just likable.
He is, and there's so many stories that we have for all of these attorneys. I mean, Don Samuels and Bruce Harvey only come out for these type of super big cases, and Clint Rucker has prosecuted some of the most infamous cases that have been subjects of the media attention all over the country. So they both have very much, they're at the top of their careers, and you're going to see this is textbook. Law students will be taught from this trial.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I feel like I'm learning watching this, and I think we're all learning something. Can you stand by? We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to go right back into the courtroom. We see it starting up. We don't want our viewers to miss anything of this explosive trial in the Tex McIver case out of Atlanta. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back in a minute. Stay tuned.